cut off our theme song early.
Yeah, BJ does that when he enters the studio.
Oh, BJ did it?
Yeah, when he enters, it messes with everything. He just has to like get logged in a little earlier. That's a little nudging to the back.
Ruined my jam. I'm like, I air drum, I sing.
He's smiling right now and under his breath muttering, those freaking fools. Welcome everybody to the morning show. Joe and Kelin here.
Good morning.
I want to do a PSA, sort of a PSA for the morning, because I hit this yesterday during the radio show when I used to fill in over at KBN. These little segments of what's happening in tech that affect people that you can do something about. Even if I help one person out there, totally worth it.
Okay.
Got a very sophisticated scam that came at me yesterday.
Ooh.
And usually I'll document these out. I'll kind of sniff them out and know it's a scam and get all my recording stuff. I couldn't run around because of my ankle yesterday, so I'm going to narrate it for you. Okay. So the premise here is know that all of your usernames and passwords are out there. People have them. There is not a password that you think is really hard to figure out that isn't already in the hands of other people, right? So the scammers, they change things up a little bit. Most of us have two-factor authentication on everything, okay?
Is that where you like get a code and have to put a code in?
So you know the username and password, but it still won't let you log in until you provide something, either an acknowledgement through a text message or an authenticator app where you got to give them a code or something.
Show all squares that have a light in it or something. Is that part of it?
That's bot. So that's not the same. So anyway, so I have every single one of my accounts two-factored as high as it can possibly go. I get constant attempts to log into my accounts. And then it says, hey, was that you that just tried to log into XYZ? I say no, and it blocks the source and it quiets down for an hour. Like it's constant. But yesterday was a good one because you can see the people that scam are trying to do an end around on two-factor authentication. So I got a robocall that the first time I saw it, I just dismissed it. The second, like almost a half hour later, it came in again. And I was like, okay, this is a scam setup. So I listened to it and said, this is Apple, the Apple Corporation, and someone tried to log into your account. If this was not you, hit 1. So I hit 1, knowing that this is the scammer, seeing if the hook is in my mouth, right?
Yeah.
And then it said, thank you for answering. A Apple support representative will be calling you shortly. Okay, so it hung up on me, and then a call came in, and the phone number and the caller ID name was 100% spoofed, where it was an Apple number that it looked like it was coming from, and it said Apple Corporation. The person that was talking was American sounding, spoke perfect English, exactly what you would expect if an Apple representative was calling you. And the first 10 minutes of the going through, they said, and there's some scary parts in here, said someone tried to log into your Apple account and change your two-factor authentication, phone number, and email address. And I noticed you did the robocall and you said that wasn't you. So now we're calling you to make sure that you're completely locked down. And they said somebody entered a customer support chat as you, and they said that they lost their account. They needed help resetting their two-factor authentication, and they were able to provide your full 15-digit credit card number ending in, and gave the 4 digits. Okay.
And those digits were correct?
Or they were correct. Ooh. They didn't know. They never cited the other part, because basically in these hacked databases, it gives the last 4, but it doesn't give the full 15. So it referred to a 15-digit as to scare me, the correct last 4 digit to scare me. And then in my brain, well, this guy knows the card number, right? But he never really said the card number. So this very good psychological game happened. And then he wanted to dig for information, and they were legitimate. Like, do you have any employees or whatever that would have done this on your behalf? Thinking I would give employee names up or the company name or data, because they were writing this shit down. And they said, and just at about the same time, there was a game that was purchased, like Candy Crush or whatever those popular app games are, and it didn't go through. Do you have any kids that might have done that? Thinking that I would say, oh, my kid, blah blah blah, more information digging. And again, they haven't asked me to do anything, give up information. They curated me for an entire 10 minutes, buying into the fact that they were an Apple representative.
Just getting more information.
Yes. And so they shared every piece of information in this hack that was accessible that would have been in those databases, but they didn't have any usable information because I still had two-factor on. And then they got to the crime part, right? They said, okay, we've taken care of all of that. We make sure you're not going to get charged. We made sure that whoever was making that request to change your contact information is blocked. Let's harden your account now to make sure this doesn't happen again. What we can do from our end is we can set up your two-factor authentication. And thinking that I'd be like, oh yeah, let's lock it down right now.
Yeah.
And I didn't get far enough because I said, no thanks, I'll do that manually. And he hung up, right? Hung up.
Just hung up.
But normal people at that point would have been in the scam so deep and be so confident that that person was Apple, they would have been emotionally ready to say, yeah, go ahead and lock it down. And I'm imagining the next steps would be is to remove my corrupted two-factor authentication and then give them information to then take over the account. That's what next step probably would. But I got him to hang up on me by just saying, no, I'll do it manually. And I there was real danger beyond that point, because if they started dicking with me making changes, that was the next step, is to me removing it. Then it's game over for me.
So if there were a legit representative that needed to speak with you, they should have like legit information they can tell you, not just ads.
I know this because I'm in tech. Apple will never make a phone call. Everything they do will be gone through text messaging and messaging through secure channels. They will never make an outgoing phone call. You can get them by calling them, but then you've called the number that you know is secure and you know you're really talking to them. They say, we will never call you for any reason. Even if there's a problem, you're going to get messages here that have you fix the problem. It will never be a human being. So as soon as the first one came out and I saw Apple's doing this robocall, first thing is like, did Apple change something? Because they never made outgoing calls. And then when I was like, this is probably a scam, I knew what was coming down the line. So all of you out there, number one, set up two-factor authentication on freaking everything. It is the gold standard for making sure these constant attempts will not be successful. Check your credit cards and your subscriptions and any payments that come through any of these apps. It's hard because they're in so many different places, but do it anyway. Check your bank statements and whatever, and never do anything over the phone. I want you to think that every incoming call, even if they're from your bank or, anywhere, think they're a scammer by default, right? And one of the proper tools is, let's just say your bank calls you and say, hey, there's a draft that's coming through for 500. Was this really you? You're going to say, I don't do this on the phone. I'll call you right back. Right. And then you call the department that deals with that. And 100% of the time, they're going to be like, yeah, we don't have record of anything happening. But the setups are so sophisticated, and now they're not using foreign sounding accents. So that's not the tip off. They're perfectly crafted for who the representative would really sound like as far as matching expectations. Yeah. It's really sophisticated.
Would you say too, another one I've heard, a big red flag is if someone is calling you in an attempt to help you with something and they say something really scary, like I see something, whatever it is, incriminating on your computer,
and they used to do that, but that was a red flag. Everybody got used to it, so their success
they still
rate
do
went
that
down.
Apparently.
But the real good ones are ones that slow walk you into it and don't use fear as the first currency to get you to do things. They want believability to be number one, and then once you're on, you've suspended your defense mechanisms. Then they ask you and say scary things after they've gotten past that open barrier.
Yeah, I've hear from a lot of elderly people that, they'll get that called Microsoft or whatever. They think they're calling to get help. And then they're told there's like child pornography on their computer, and they freak out and they say, well, we need to clean this for you right now. We can do that for so much money if you give us your card number right now. And then they do, because they're scared and they don't know. And it's like,
yeah, it's
so scary.
So we have to protect people by telling them what to do and what to look for and how to. I want everybody to be a cynic when it comes to an incoming call. Just because the phone rings, you do not have to answer.
Speaking of fraud, I've been wondering if I should do anything about this. So forever ago, probably, I don't know, a year or two ago, maybe, somebody got my credit card number and I was seeing fraudulent charges.
Mhm.
So I called the bank. I explained, hey, somebody's got my number. None of these are mine. And it was obvious, like $1 here, $1 there when they start testing it. So they said, all right, not a problem. We're going to shut this card down. We'll send you a new card. So they did. There's been no issues. Over the last week or so, when I look at my credit card, I'm seeing attempts again. And it says like decline of these little purchases,
Right.
trying to use the old card.
Right.
Is there something I should do or be concerned about?
Because every credit card number and CV number and billing address is out there. So the only reason they're not using it is because the person that wants the money and to be able to use the card will get caught almost instantaneously because of the sophistication of fraud preventions through there. So they have to create mules that use that, and they have to basically layer it in to a system. So like, let's just say, I'll give you a hypothetical. They'll use a dating app and they'll find some lonely people that are kind of desperate. And you'll have the scammer that will form a relationship with someone who's alone and just wants attention and needs some, companionship. And somewhere down in the discussion, the setup is that they'll use that person that's lonely as the mule to be able to facilitate scamming things that they order off of Amazon or Best Buy, and then getting those materials shipped off to someone who can do something with it. The goal is to get that stuff to another country where the law doesn't care about scamming. We can't, extradite them, or, we can't prosecute them. Doesn't go there. So if they're in the United States, we have a low barrier of entry. And this is one of my big complaints about it's great to be able to offer more resources to more people. The problem, we make things incredibly easy, then the people we don't want to be using those things have an easy time. So it used to be, to get an 888 number or an 800 number, it used to be incredibly hard and expensive. You know how much a 888 number is right now? Like, it's pennies. You can grab one, change it every 2 seconds. So if I wanted to do it in the 90s, I had to call the phone company. I had to register it to me. I had to provide identification on it. I had to wait 2 weeks to have it registered with me. And I had to pay like $100 a month to even have the stinking number. And then once it's mine, if I changed it, I'd have to do that same freaking thing. Now, in about 30 seconds, I can go get one for a penny. And then once it gets compromised and people block it, and I'm a known fraudster, let's go grab another one. So that cycle is, we've made it easy for businesses and people to get 800 numbers. We also made it really easy and anonymous for people who want to do harm with it to get one too.
Is it true, or is this like a wives' tale or something, that once you answer a spam call, you are now on some list or registry, or they know that it's
not
real?
It's not the biggest blemish. So yes, you can give them, a check mark next to, there's a person on the other side of this, rather than a busy signal or disconnected number. But the leaked and compromised information that is already out there, you have to think that everything that is knowable about Kelin is already out there. So you giving them she doesn't answer her phone and the phone is different, doesn't freaking matter.
They're like, wait,
that's not something that's going to stop it from happening, because it's so prevalent.
Yeah. I Googled myself. My kids came home from school one time and they were like, Mom, we were Googling at school, and we were Googling each other, and we were Googling parents, and we Googled you, and there's all kinds of stuff about you. And I said, well, yeah, I've been around a long time and I do things on the internet. There's all kinds of things about me on the internet. And I'm like, oh, that is a little concerning though. Like, if you Google somebody and you don't find a lot, I'm always like, oh, I wonder if they're a little more secure than I am, because there's so much on there.
We caused this problem, just like we're doing with AI, where on a principle level, we disagree, but we still do it even if we disagree with it. So if tech advocates in the past were like, hey, you're using all these products, and when you're not reading what you're agreeing to, you're giving up your privacy and spilling your information out to the internet. And then we're like, oh no, we trust these companies. They're not going to just give our information away. And we said, yes, they're going to give it away. They're going to sell it. One of the biggest markets is selling your information to third, fourth, fifth, sixth parties. And so if anything you put in there, if you don't want people to know about, don't use those services. And we're like, it'll be just fine. Right. So you did it. You flushed all your stuff into the public square.
Yeah.
And now the bad people have everything they need. We used to be able to triangulate. And if you got 3 pieces of information about someone, you could totally do identity theft on them. And it was common stuff that everybody was giving out freely. So the tech people finally gave up and said, hey, nobody's listening. They're going to give their shit away because they're getting free applications. You've lost this battle. Nobody cares. Everybody's like, nobody's doing anything to me right now. So in the future, it's how bad could it get? And so, yeah, we're on the hook for that. So that's why we have one tool right now, and that's two-factor authentication. If it weren't for that, the whole economic system would be dead right now.
Here's a question.
Yeah.
This might be dumb. I don't know. I am not tech savvy, but I have noticed now every time I go to a site that's like a clothing company or a boutique or something you would shop for, I always get a little pop-up now that says accept cookies.
Mm-hmm.
What exactly does that mean?
There are a billion different types of cookies, but most of the time they're preferences. If you visit a site more than one time, it fills in information like passwords, usernames, preferences. It knows who you are.
Kind of like how you'll get served something you had looked at or something like that.
Old style cookies, ones that pick up more data than it should. Like every cookie is different. So when I put a piece of code in there that says, when you go there and you type something and you have history, I could drop informational cookie that's for advertising preferences. And then when I go back to the site, like let's just say you go to you're buying airline tickets and you looked 5 times for airline tickets. And I have a formula that the closer it gets to the day that you want to leave, the more,
expensive it gets.
More expensive it gets.
Yeah.
Clearing tracking cookies means that sometimes now cookies aren't as effective anymore because they have different ways of doing that same thing internally rather than depending on the browser. So cookies right now are more preference based because people are wise to what they were doing with them.
Yeah. Now I'm seeing these options. It'll say like, use only what's necessary or something like that. You can suggest. And I was like, I don't know. Well, I'll hit that, but I don't know what it means.
The issue with scammers is only going to get worse. The age verification laws being pushed will end up with leaks worse than passwords. Think Discord leak. Yeah, that's absolutely right. And, and the automation, the speed that they can do it. I think the one strategy is making things more expensive. Free does not exist when it comes to tech, right?
Yeah.
So like when you use ChatGPT, is it free?
In my experience, it was when you try it and then they want you to pay something.
Okay. It is not free.
Okay.
It is not free whatsoever.
Uh-oh.
So anytime something is free, you have to question what you're really paying for that thing. Now, usually if you like, they have options with some of the LLM models that Google Gemini in particular, that they have options. Hey, you can use Gemini for free and you'll help train our things we'll collect information and help our engineers and help our algorithms feed in data to make the system better. Or you can pay $9 a month and we won't use any of your stuff. It just stays with your account and we won't use it and learn. Now you got to trust that they're not doing that anyway, because how the hell would you freaking know?
Yeah.
Right. And so, but if you can limit the amount of participation you have in trading free, sometimes it's just you watch an ad and it's free because you're making them revenue on ad sales.
Yeah.
If you can't figure out why it's free, don't freaking do it until you do. Nothing is free. So I suggest making everything that was free cost at least a little something. Okay. So the average email user receives about 1 million messages more than they actually see come into their email box. Okay.
Oh,
and the services create ways of automatically deleting things that are, you have things that are obviously scam and spam. And then you have ones that might be legitimate, and you have ones that are closer to I really can't tell, and things are hard. And they automatically cut these ones out, and then they placeholder the other ones, and then they maybe expose you to some of the ones that might be or not be, using algorithms to figure out who you reply to and the conversations you have and who you shop with. So it's using what it knows about you to figure out who's spamming you. Now, what would happen tomorrow if we made every email you sent cost 1 penny? Right? You wouldn't matter at all.
Yeah.
1 cent postage. It means that you pay $1 a month to have email service.
Yeah.
Right. But what would happen to the spammers when they send out 2 billion email messages?
They'd be like racking up the money.
So they would have to pay an incredible amount.
Yeah.
And what if we had an exchange system where the person that sends it, the person that sends it pays the 1 cent, and the person receives it gets that 1 cent. Okay. So now you wouldn't hate spam all that much. You would basically bankrupt
Go ahead,
the
keep sending it.
spammers
Yeah.
by signing up on their list. So they'd send you a bunch of money and try to get millions of spam. And then the spammers would be like, well, this ain't freaking worth it. And they would stop spamming.
Why don't we do this?
Could totally do it. But there wouldn't be people when something's free and all of a sudden it costs money and somebody else was paying for it. They would never do the 1 penny plan. They would never do it because now it costs something.
Especially because can't you see too, like if you're somebody that is continuously sending out like marketing emails on their end, they could see ones that are never opened.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's all kinds of stuff. Sometimes if I've got time and I feel like it, I'll open them and I'll unsubscribe. But most of the time I just hit mass delete. So yeah, if they're like, we are spending money for this to just get deleted.
But they're sending a billion messages. So all they need, what if they got 0.5% of people who buy it? It doesn't matter if you don't, they don't care about you. They're looking at their effectiveness. If they send out 1 billion and they get 1,000 scams at $500 a piece, that's big money. And that is the industry of scam. It's basically large volume. And if their effective rate goes down, then they just send more spam messages. So that's why my strategy of making it cost more, when they have to increase the number of email addresses spent, their costs go up considerably, and then the attractiveness of doing it dissipates. So anyway, that's
we should do this.
Julie wants us to go on the political route. Now, I think my rant is done on scams.
Okay.
But let's do it. Julie, how do you feel about Frank LaRose handing over the Ohio voter rolls to the feds, names, addresses, last for Social Security? I like it for one reason. I think there are states that are incredibly fraudulent in their voting rolls. And I think if the federal government challenges them to expose what they're doing internally, right? So the state's managing the voter rolls and the federal government, funding it or sending them money, they got two options: lose federal funding and work as an independent state, and you can do it whatever the hell you want. Or if you want to participate in the protections of the federal government, you have to comply with regulations that make sure things are fair.
Yeah.
Now, Julie I'm going to make her argument on her behalf. If the federal government can force states to do something, then it has to be an authoritative relationship. Who has the truth, right? Should the states have the truth and keep the federal government in check? Or should the federal government keep the states in check? And it all depends your argument with who's doing a better job at this time, right? And I think both of them should be shared truth, where they both keep each other in check. But you can't have rogue states that fraudulently, at least theoretically, put a president in the White House because you wouldn't check your rolls, made sure that they were insulated from fraud checks, that you made sure that your illegals were dumped in there, you made sure the dead people could vote in there. If your strategy for your state is to keep sending your electors fraudulently, then the federal government needs to say, hold up, I have a power over here and I can withhold federal funding if you don't comply with making sure that it is safe. And I think it's a noble request down to the states, as being done with what Frank LaRose is doing.
This person says baseless lie. There is no proof.
What's baseless lie?
I don't know. What's the lie, that they're doing this or that
this is my favorite one, because things that are unknowable, that are only probability based. There are people out there that have 100% confidence that something has happened or something hasn't happened. And that it always makes me shudder. If I say, hey, there's probably fraud in the lottery, right?
Yeah.
And you really are a pro lottery person, you're going to be like, there's no fraud. And I'm saying that mathematically there's probably fraud, because there are endpoints that have no way of shoring them up to 100%. The best we can do is shore them up as much as we can get. We can put processes that mitigate downside. There is fraud, right?
Yeah.
And until you can say, okay, there's probably some fraud, I don't believe there's a whole lot, but even if there's not a whole lot, we should still do our best to make sure fraud isn't happening. And then all you have to do is say, all right, let's do a test. Let's pull voter rolls. Let's do an audit of the voter rolls. And I'll tell you, after we look through them, how many were fraudulent, right?
Mm-hmm.
Twitter did this in the beginning. Elon Musk said, hey, I'm not buying Twitter. Most of your participants are 80% bots, right?
Yeah.
And so it's fake stuff that's going on. And Jack Dorsey said, no, it's 4%, right? He was the one like, there's no bots on my system. So Elon's like, okay, I'm going to buy it. And then he got in there and he was like, yep, 80% bots.
Wow.
So the real, if you want to contest the it's not happening, right?
Yeah.
Do a freaking audit. Just show it's not happening, and then everybody will be satisfied. You'll know that you were a little bit wrong, that it happened more than you believed. I'll know that at least we know about it, and we can make stuff happen.
Yeah.
But the whole basis is no proof is the most intellectually dishonest attitude you could take towards it.
He said, "You said there is, and I'm paraphrasing, a lot of fraud."
Yes.
He said it is very minimal. The handing over to the feds is not the answer. Independent review by the state independent commission would be the
unless
the
they're
answer.
all captured. If you have independent councils that are all like, yeah, we like the illegal voting, and yeah, we like the ballot harvesting, and we like all of that. Not technically illegal, but if we could just be negligent enough, then those will pass through the system, and then we can keep getting the results that we like getting. Now, I bet you if those Democrats, it was shifted in the other direction, and let's just say all of the illegal immigrants, a whole Hispanic population decided to just go rogue and start going straight Republican. All of a sudden, you're going to be like, wait, something's fishy here. We got to pay close attention to it. It's all the freaking states where they say fraud isn't happening that all are cutting in a certain persuasion. And I'm just pulling out that cut and saying, that's suspicious.
I mean, and now he's saying the audits that have occurred show there was barely any. But so, okay, well, barely any isn't none. So what's the downside then to attempting?
But the audits weren't what I'm asking. Okay.
Yeah.
The audits are done to prove that they're secure, because the interest of the states is to make it so that people still have belief in a voting system.
Mm-hmm.
You have to take a contrarian's view to an audit and actually look for the ones that are suspicious of fraud. So for instance, we talked about this one time. So if your audit is signature confirmation and you look at how many signatures were confirmed, and you're like, oh, there were 3 of them and they were investigated. Now on your list, there were 3 fraudulent or 3 after the fact confirmed, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, a cynic's going to come in there and say, hey, it's not your confirmation number that I'm taking an objection to. I'm saying I know people, and when they're checking me in and I sign, I know the person in front of me is not a trained handwriting expert. Right?
Yeah.
So when I write on my signature on a receipt, and the person looks at the back of my credit card and compares it, they want to say they did the thing, but they're not really looking for it.
They're like, oh, okay, there it is.
So I want to go through the same pile with a signature recognition and have them do the audit and see which ones they feel are not close enough to pass muster of being confirmed.
So not that an audit was done, but was
a real audit wasn't done.
Yes, an actual audit that is
so
going
the algorithm's
going
to say, hey, you have John Smith who hasn't voted in 20 years. He's technically registered, and all of a sudden he votes every year starting in 2002. Well, the algorithm is going to say, what freaking changed, right? And figure out whether or not John Smith's ballot, somebody recognized that he was never using it and decided to throw that in for themselves and fill out his stuff and forge the signature, or go to John Smith and say, I know you're not voting this time. You mind if I borrow your vote this time? Sign this form and whatever. And then, so we're not really looking to see the ones that shouldn't be counted in our elections. We're saying, hey, we got this arbitrary standard, and as long as we minimally meet the requirements, you can go to the cashier and said, did you check the signature? Yeah, I checked the signature. Passed audit.
Yeah.
That's
kind of like,
about.
You can't go on this website unless you were this age. And a kid goes, okay, I'm that age.
Yeah. Passed the audit. Yep. Look, the confirmation was they said they were over 13. Audit passed.
Must be good.
Yeah. So anyway, but even if you take all of that aside, that's just my opinions and thoughts. If you have a system that has large scale amount of people using it, there is fraud. Okay. So what if you go to Best Buy right now, Do you think that people shoplift from Best Buy?
Probably.
Okay. Do you think that a low shoplifting rate is something the managers are told that they would really like to accomplish?
A low shop, probably. Yeah.
Okay. So maybe they had, 1 month, $1 million worth of steals, 10,000, whatever. They probably that's their job, is to make sure people aren't walking out the door with paying.
Yeah.
So the manager's like, hey, I can't stop it. I know there's going to be some in, but can I do some things that make it really rough to steal from my store? Can I put up a person at the doorway that checks them in and out? Can I put tag detectors
sensors,
at the door? Can I put some things behind glass? And then if you take a method where people who are getting away with something makes it harder for them, well, then your theft rate. So what if I told you that theft was 5%, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's pretty low when what Best Buy does on the aggregate. They can build 5% theft into the margins and they can pay for the theft. They still don't want it to occur. But now let's just say you own a store, right? You're not Best Buy, you're a small store. You've got maybe $500,000 worth of inventory. Now, how many thefts are you cool with being able to tolerate? Or if there's a theft, you're going to go ape shit.
Yeah. I don't want any.
Right. So if it affects you, your tolerance is going to be basically zero. And I'm going to have to tell you, well, you're never going to flush all thefts out of it.
Yeah.
You're just going to have to be okay with tolerating a little. So these commenters that say, there's no rampant fraud, they're looking at the end result. If Best Buy made money, right, they'd be saying, Best Buy's going to say, hey, we really don't want any theft. They're going to say, you made $1 billion last year, so let people steal shit, right? It's not that significant. And Best Buy's going to be like, no, we want close to none as we can possibly get.
Yeah.
So those two arguments, when you put it in a retail center, makes no sense. And you can understand how one fraudulent or misvote is way too many. And tell me that you're really trying to get those out of the system, and I'll be happy.
So why? And so I haven't been following this much. This person says, have a state commission, nonpartisan, do it, not hand over to the feds.
Yeah.
Okay. What is being handed over to the feds? Like what exactly are they saying?
They want the data. They want to sort and sift through the data that the states have and see if one of those state commissions or their state auditors aren't catching the real scams that are happening in voter fraud. So if they're doing minimal, where, like everybody in the room's like, let's just make it a little bit better so that we don't get political pressures on us. And, hey, there's probably some illegal immigrants on here and they're using a stolen identity and the vote counts, but it's hard to do that without, upsetting the apple cart and making constituents hate us kind of thing. They don't want to see, and they're not, I don't think they're protecting it for ways, I mean, maybe a little bit of it. I don't think they're protecting it for fraud reasons. I think what they're trying to do is having the minimal amount of safeguards and the minimal amount of actions that don't disrupt the status quo. Because I'm gonna rip the Band-Aid off. So if there's hell to pay, I want it to just get it out of the way at one time. Politically, that's a terrible maneuver, because what would happen if the federal government looked through the state's election rolls, found that 20% of all voters should never been allowed to cast a vote? What's it going to do to the trust between voters and your state if you lived in one of those states?
Not going to be good.
There's not a politician that wants to be known as being part of a state that's it's a fraud state. And so they're fearful that the federal government's going to look through their dirty laundry and expose them as being technical frauds, not procedural frauds.
So why, if Julie or whatever this other person's name is, if they were politicians, part of the state, elected officials, I could see them having beef with this. Why would just a citizen care if somebody is handing over this information? If it's part of an audit, if it's the feds looking into this, if it's making sure no fraud is happening.
Well, what Julie said there is, you believe fraud in states and election boards, but not the federal government. Exactly opposite, right? There is a confrontational arrangement between federal government and states. States aren't giving it to the federal government because they are going to look. It's like handing over your bank statements to your enemy. you know that the person that wanted the statements is freaking gunning for you. They're going to use what you gave them to indict you, not indict you legally, but indict you for things they think you're doing. And especially if you have something to hide, you don't want them digging through it because they're going to be ultra mean to you. The other side, that's why I said the states need to hold the federal government, and the federal government needs to hold the states both accountable. So the federal government is going to lie and going to do those misdeeds if the states don't have the ability to keep them in check. You want confrontational relationships between those two, but we don't want one lopsided where the federal government becomes it can subjugate the states and the states can subjugate the federal government. That's what's happening. This is the states saying, screw you. We may or may not be doing things wrong, but we don't trust you, or we don't think you have the authority to parse through our records. You're no better than us. And they have a valid argument. I don't believe the federal government comes with, virtue in their, deal.
We're the good guys,
but
and we're going to make sure this is right.
In this case, if they have that ability, then you have pierced the veil of states' rights. But the states' rights, if you want to not have your veil pierced in business, you understand the pierced veil thing?
I mean, I've heard it in like a religious aspect.
Okay,
but
so this is sort of a metaphor in business where there are protections that the law affords you as a company. And and it's there to protect you from overreach by things that are outside. But piercing that veil means that you did something where you poked out and created a hole that then is an opening through the veil. You made first action where you broke a rule. You thought you were protected and you could just operate how you want, but you did a misstep on your side. Instead of protecting the veil by operating under procedure, you pierced the veil because now you operated, and now it opens you to powers from outside that couldn't have got through had you followed the rules. So that's what we have here is we have a pierced veil where if the states want to have states' rights, right, they have to conform to standards, and they can't be the villain. They can't be the operator that's trying to get around the rules. They have to be the truth example that is setting the standard. And that's how you keep the federal government in check, by following the rules, not trying to get away with things.
Yeah.
Did we miss some?
I think so. Let's see. You believe there is fraud in states and election board. We read that one, I think. I said there wasn't a giant amount. Our disagreement is who does the audit and how much the impact is.
That's agreed. I want software to do it. I want to take people out of the equation and just have, like fraud detection systems and credit cards. Fraud detection is really, really good, right? They have computer systems that watches behavior and can pick out whether this doesn't look quite right. And it weighs a lot of different data points to find that out. Do you know why it's so good?
Why?
They're protecting money. The banks figured out that they don't want people stealing money, and stealing money is really bad for their model. So fraud protection puts it into, yep, this is fraud, this might be fraud, and this is safe, and this is not fraud. They put it in buckets, and then maybe they take the real people and involve the end consumer to figure out if this is real fraud because it's hitting some of the numbers. If voting was done this way, you could profile it, right? Such as the person hasn't voted and all of a sudden they start voting, or they're 102 years old, or the signatures don't match, or these different algorithms can figure out what's a high risk probability that this isn't a vote. I would be a great marker for a legitimate vote. Uber consistent, right? I go all the time and I do the same things. I skip a lot of primaries. So if you build a profile on a voter, like I don't do anything out of the norms. I'm quite predictable whether I'm going to show up or not or whatever. There's enough history. And so data fed into a system where you don't have an arbitrary auditor that might be a human being that might be doing just as much fraud on the other side is not something that I'm after either, because I don't trust people in general.
Okay, so they say they're fearful that the federal government, as it stands now, is going to manufacture a crisis to put doubt in our electoral system, seeds of doubt.
It deserves it if it's true.
So they could, the states then you're saying could be like, all right, here's our info. Here's a little fraud, but to benefit you, you're going to tell everyone there was mass fraud and now you've tarnished us.
But it's simple math. So I would make the arrangement. We'll give you this stuff. and I want you to give me your research findings.
Mhm.
And then we're going to have our people look to see how you got included the ones that were fraudulent. And if you pull any shady shit where you try to get things that were suspicious but not known,
Mhm.
if you do that to us, then we're going to go back at you, have you correct your findings until you made the confrontational first volley, and then I made my response to your volley and tried to narrow it down. And through that combating between those two sides, you're going to end up with what a real reasonable, right?
Yeah.
A real reasonable rate actually was.
Do you think, though, that they believe, well, the average person isn't going to do that digging and that pushback? They're just going to hear, oh, massive fraud and run with it. And now,
well, they will, but what's
that.
the alternative? If you have a complete compromise voting electoral system within your state,
Yeah.
are you going to pick messiness of exposure of information that undermines trust, or are you going to just be okay with fraudulent elections? You pick your bad one.
Yeah.
I would prefer the messiness as long as there was transparency that weren't tied to a single person. So you have the Democrats going through the Epstein list, and you have the Republicans going through the Epstein list. And you see that Republicans only came up with Democrats were on the list, and Democrats only said Trump was on the list. Well, you can't really trust what they came up with.
Yeah.
But through the battle of, okay, so give the Republicans out all of the Democrats, and give the Democrats out all the Republicans. Now you combine the two lists, and now you have a full float of the real information that was within.
Yeah.
Take advantage of the battle, not, don't think that one, captured group is going to somehow be so noble they're going to tell on themselves.
It's just going to be, if I'm going down, you're going down too.
You use it.
Yeah.
And that's the founders really liked the balances of power that are equal. Nobody is in a subservient role, and lots of battles, lots of argument. It's not, we think when proper government is working, it means that one side lopsided their majority, and then they can just do whatever they want unfettered. Well, that removes one of the founders' principles. Well, if you have a lopsided majority, there's no arguing happening, and then you get runaway badness in one direction, regardless of what party it is. So the voters, when you have incumbent president, we have a midterm election, the natural result is that we balance that power out and say, oh, Republicans have had it 2 years, and that's a lot of time for them to do it. Let's balance it a little bit, put some Democrats. So you will see the House, the Senate really take a new shape as the balance of power naturally occurs because of, that lopsidedness. And I have faith and trust in that system. More fighting.
More fighting. There's some comments below. Let's see. It's a pretext to try to have the feds take over the elections, which is unconstitutional. Stop the Steal has already done a good job to cause people to doubt. It's the reason why you're having this conversation. Is it?
Yeah, but here's the thing. Like, these are all curiosities that are healthy as part of the challenge. And then someone else can pipe up and they can counter those things and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
The one thing that can't happen, and the argument is the only part of this that I disagree with, is you can't challenge the status quo because it'll wreck everything. And so I'm not willing to just tolerate this mathematical, this is a dereliction of duty to just say, hey, let's just deal with the brokenness that is for the sake of it, because all of your things are imperfect. And I hate that argument.
We got to play the game. Yeah. That's just how we do it.
Yeah.
And
so if you're doing everything wrong, right?
Yeah.
And you won't change something because it might have a 1% inaccuracy. You're intolerant to missteps or inaccuracy on the new thing, but you'll tolerate all kinds of inaccuracies on the thing that exists. Doesn't make sense to me. Full self-driving is one of those things. Okay. So you drive around manually.
Yeah.
Right. And there's an accident rate that associated with manual driving.
Uh-huh.
If autopilot or autonomous driving reduces the overall crash rate in the aggregate. So let's just say there's 70,000 crashes amongst the people who are using autopilot. Percentage wise, there's 50% of crashes happen because of autopilot. So there's a gain in the amount of crashes that happen with autopilot. Now, when the autopilot makes a mistake and crashes 2 times, we throw away the autopilots because we're taking the saying, well, look, the driver would have never crashed. It was the autopilot's fault. And now the autopilot must go away because it made a mistake the driver wouldn't have. And I'm going to say, wait a minute, you just reduced 35,000 crashes. And then you're comparing that with 2 crashes that were caused because you were using the system. That is an offset where the net gain was worth the risk of 2 new problems happening because you use that system. And it's that bad fuzzy math that these election people and the environmental people and all these other religious activist, topics madden me inside and make me fume.
You're making Joe fume.
You're making me mad. Yeah, and these things like who audits the software, that's a curiosity that needs to be balanced. And it's never going to be there's a trusted source. It's whoever has control of it needs to have an opposing force. So these are election type of examples. But when votes are being counted, right, you want to have representatives of Republicans and Democrats to keep an eye on it. You don't want a counter that is a Democrat to not have someone looking over their shoulder that can keep track and make sure they didn't go into Democrat mode. They wanted to stay in a ballot counting mode.
Yeah.
Right. And that's fair. That's the balance of it. If the Democrat sees it goes in one direction, they put their foot down. And so what about if those 2 overseers there get compromised? That's the same thing. Who audits the software? You're not going to trust it. But if you create enough layers of making it as hard as possible, it's never going to be 100%. But would you rather a vote counter be completely alone, or maybe increasing the probability that there's a self-described Republican or Democrat over the shoulder? Which would you choose? Even if those Republican and Democrats couldn't be trusted either, which would you have?
So the 1 or the 2 that can't be trusted?
1, no oversight. 2, oversight, but they might not be able to trust it either.
At least if you've got the 2 oversight.
They might.
Yeah.
What are the chances that if the counter goes rogue and there's nobody watching,
nobody knows?
Probability is 0, right?
Yeah. So what if the counter got bribed or blackmailed or whatever?
Any number above 0 is better.
Yeah.
So anyway, you need me to be that software auditor and that objective force behind it, because I'm a dick when it comes to math and I'm not a partisan at all. So I can overlook what I want to happen to just get to the data, because I feel, and there are nerds like me out there that never make an appearance in this because number 1, there's no money in it, right? Number 2, it's annoying as shit to deal with dumb people trying to mess around with math and data. And so we stay away. But if you can go find smart people and make them the people who are overly critical and love the position of taking normal people and making them miserable, those are the vote counters and the auditors that you actually need.
Oh yeah, I've personally seen there are days where I have to call up Joe and be like, I need your math brain. I'm not seeing this.
We are very valuable, and I wish society would use us more.
Let's see. I agree with you. We absolutely should challenge the status quo. I disagree with what we see in Georgia, where the FBI comes in and takes roles. I disagree with putting full faith in the feds for this.
And you're, like I said, that's your personal opinion. And there's a lot to do to win you over, that who you trust and who you don't trust. And I'm not going to control all of that. I'm not going to make the unknowables knowing which states are virtuous and trying to do their best and which ones are just fraud dumpsters. But I just know mathematically there are some amongst us, and somebody needs to identify it. And somebody needs to fix it. And it might be an ideal that is unachievable, and that's fine. But I want to see them at least trying and sharing enough data with us that buys us into at least they are freaking trying. But I'll tell you one thing that makes me buy out immediately: when you gaslight me and tell me that what I know mathematically is possible isn't freaking happening. You're an instant pause, mute, out of the conversation. All you have to say to me is, I agree that I will go with you that it's happening, and we need to do more about cleaning and clearing that up.
But then there's always then pushback against whoever this third party is. I mean, is this not sort of what we saw in Elon Musk with, let's bring someone else in that is smart enough to really do a deep dive and look at information? And what happened? It became an emotional fight of, can we trust Elon Musk? We can't trust him. He's in the pocket of this person. So we're going to do that with any third party.
We are. And that's what we have to square ourselves with, because everything is on the table except one thing, and that's status quo. Anything we do different that creates transparency, and we can even practice this. Let's not do elections or any controversial topics. Let's just take one that's easy. All right. Do research on pharmaceuticals. Do research on climate change and environmentalism. Practice on one that is just kind of very static and lots of research dollars go into it, but regular public, they have no transparency in the findings, because these are also captured industries that the trustworthiness of the people that are providing the data skew it in a way that basically make sure that they get research funding and that they have jobs, right?
Yeah.
And so I don't trust climate data, just like I don't trust, fraud statistics in elections for the exact same reasons. But we can take the environmentalism, square it up so that no matter what it is, we just know what the truth is, and don't let these arbitrary, subjective analysis of it. Let us be the analysis of it. Let computer systems be the analysis, so it'll tell us what happened. So let's just say you had a warming trend of the climate. And this is completely hypothetical, made up. Don't tell me that this isn't really happening, because I know it's not happening, because it's hypothetical.
Made up. Yeah.
Okay. So if you're a research scientist and you're doing climate analysis over a period of time, and if you're looking at a data of 1,000 years, and it looks like you get a lot of bouncing around of temperatures and CO2 levels and whatever. And when I look at that, the normal person is just going to see these highs and lows and highs and lows and highs and lows. And it looks pretty baseline the longer you look at a graph, right? And the research is like, I'm going to release this thing, and nobody's going to send me any climate, because nobody's going to be afraid, right? And so that's going to put me out of a job.
People are going to say big whoop.
But if I take just the last 100 years and I remove everything else and I create a bigger graph, then I see a top portion of an increase. Now, when people see it, they're going to say, holy shit, it's really, really going up. They're going to get afraid. You didn't make up any data. You just limited and skewed the statistics to further an argument. But us, we're like, show me the 1,000 years. And the justification from the person that absolutely needs that research dollars is like, well, it doesn't express the nature of how I want you to feel about this. So I'm going to not give you the data that doesn't help me out. I'm just going to give you the data, truthful data, that helps my cause and my deal. Same thing happens in election thing.
Yeah.
What they give you is curated by somebody. So if you want uncurated data, you have to take the confrontational deal. I want a researcher that needs the funding, and I want a researcher that hates that you get funding. And then what data we get is the product of two people fighting, one that has a bias in one direction balanced with the bias in the other direction, and we get more of a baseline.
Yeah, kind of like, if you're not going to be able to trust different news or media outlets, well, watch them both, because the truth is going to be somewhere in the middle.
Yeah. But they have to interact with one another. If you just watch Fox News or MSNBC, then what you're doing is you're taking the high levels, like the really fringe case of the whole thing.
Yeah.
And then you have to average them down. But like the relationship between the president and the press pool. I love that the press pool is mean to President Trump. I really do. The problem is they're captured and they're going for the slug line and the headline, rather than being a force that actually pushes against.
Yeah, just like when you see the Fox News correspondents that kiss his ass all the time, and you're like, how did they just grill him over this very hard question, and you threw him a compliment in the form of a question?
Yeah, but the interaction is that you ask a question, and that exchange goes as deep as it needs to before it's ended. So you make a thing to get me backed into a political corner and make me say something that's going to make a headline. Then I push back at you and, hey, what'd you ask me that just for this regular thing? And then you're like, no, I did it because the people need to know. And then you're like, well, you write these articles and the only thing that you post is whatever. And by the end, we have weighed out the escaping of a negative news item by the president, the pitting only unpopular things against the president. And through those exchanges, it makes both of them look very poor at the end of the day. Everybody gets to lose some of their credibility and their notoriety because they got to keep battling, and still there was no more things to battle about that topic. But the theater of those exchanges don't result in actually information for what you say you're doing it for in the first place.
Like the hearings.
Exactly.
What a joke these hearings
tolerate
are.
it. We put up with it because we like the blood sport. And that's why it's so, like I said, it would take us culturally shifting into being a data-driven, non-emotional culture than people who like the drama and just want to pick a primitive tribe and be all in on that tribe.
Oh, yeah. And that's all we are. That's all we are, is the emotional drama. And they know that, and they use that against us.
But I also contend that feeding this narrative of massive fraud, which really has blown up since 2020, is not healthy for us and is divisive. Yes, work to fix it, but keep mind perfect. Mind perfect is the enemy of good.
But here's piercing the veil of that. That's a good philosophy and principle. So long that because you have that principle of like, let's use a principle that sounds good and is very emotionally charged. Just be kind, right? And then you and I adopt the just be kind thing, and we're like, oh, we're just kind. This is a great philosophy. Just be kind. And then there's a bunch of people who are like, I'm going to take advantage of Joe and Kelin, and now there's going to be no punishment for me doing bad stuff because they're just going to be freaking kind. So if you want people to be all kind, then you have to reward the kindness by you regulating yourself and being disciplined, so you don't offer up legitimate reasons for you to be unkind. So if somebody does something, and in my brain, it's like, oh, I got to figure out a way to be kind to them. And they did something that there's no real way to be kind to them because they don't deserve it. I either get to be delusional in my kindness, or I'll be like, this is the kindest thing I can do for you right now. I'm going to give you the punishment so you can change. And then it earns you being kind for you in the future. So steady up your shit so you can get the kind version of me.
Yeah.
Right? And but those, let's just say, hey, that argument with the Epstein list. Let's just say Epstein was connected to every power broker and every politician in government. So outing the Epstein list is going to make everybody feel like everybody in government, everybody in business, everybody that we trust right now, we immediately lose trust for them. That argument that he threw out there was, hey, for the sake of our government and operating one more day, let's conceal information so the whole thing doesn't go away. Let's just be kind. Let's status quo it for the sake of keeping our government alive. I argue that if you're shit, you have to be honest how shit you are and tear the Band-Aid off. And if you want it to be, let's be healthy by not reminding people how shitty things are, you have to ask them, go be delusional that it's shitty and just pretend like we've got a high functioning government, or let's spend 6 months being honest, knowing we have a shit government, feeling terrible while we're fixing it, so we can earn ourselves into then having that relationship with it where we want to feel healthy and peaceful. I'm not for delusion.
Yeah, I mean, and we've seen this when it comes to like the changing of what's in our food and, just let people have what they want to eat, or, just give people help from the government and money. They're poor, so we should help them. There's a time and a place to help, and a time and a place to say, here's why you're stuck. And it's not kind for me to keep enabling you. It's kind for me to show you and change it.
Right.
Then we can move on.
This is this one I want to respond to here. Oh, let me get, we've been going back and forth. Who's that? Shards of aperture. Anyway, you want better faith in fair elections, get rid of gerrymandering both sides. I do not disagree. I'm a big adversary of gerrymandering. And again, I go to AI and algorithms to pick no political, just mathematical representations. You
said you're an adversary of gerrymandering.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. No gerrymandering, have it be picked by, you give it like how we want our different districts to be grouped. And then algorithms take your formula and create your districts, not based on who's going to win an election. Right. And so, I say get rid of it. But Julie's questions, we need Dave Beatrice in on this convo. And last time I was here, he said this, and I didn't argue it because we'd be arguing different things. So I want to tell you guys. And Dave Beatrice said he's part of the Board of Elections. Might be even the head of the Board of Elections. And he says that it is secure and tight at the Board of Elections. And he is right. Okay. It's just dependent on what your definition of secure is. My definition of security is different than the Board of Elections security. Okay. So I give you a rule set, and then you go into the rule set and you basically are compliant with all election rules, and you have minimally compliant and over the top compliant. So I say ballots need to be stored in a locked safe when elections aren't there. So minimally safe, I get a little hard to break into. Dave Beecher's version, I put in a vault that can withstand nuclear explosions. So it's entirely secure, right? But we're not arguing the same thing. He is ultimately compliant with the rules. I'll give him that. But if there is a vulnerability that is not expressed in your compliancy measures, right, then it's not secure in the way of these things aren't part of your measures. So you need an engineer. So here's the deal. And I'll make a good metaphor because I love doing these. So your house gets broken into, and you go to Grok and you say, "Hey, how can I increase my chances of not getting broken into?" And it says, lock your doors, install some cameras, get an alarm system, leave house lights on at your house. Don't tell people that you're on vacation. These are really good standards to follow to not get broken into. And you're like, okay, I made a list, and every day I check my list that I've done all of those things. Then your house gets broken into, right? And you're saying, listen, we are secure. So I'm not going to bother adding any other steps to secure me in different ways. I have an audit that I followed all of the steps, the big probability things that I was told to do, and I'm doing all of them. I am the most secure that you could be. And then somebody comes in and says, hey, you still got broken into, so there are things that you're not planning for that aren't on your list. So what I want you to do is I want you to put things on your standards, and then you look at it and say, oh, wait, I'm not secure anymore, because things you weren't doing gets added to your checklist to be able to engineer yourself around a problem that's happening outside of the scope of what you were planning for. That's my contention. So yes, elections are secure. And when Dave Beecher says Mahoning County elections are the most secure, that should go to the consumer is they are following protocols beyond minimalist, compliancy.
Not just here are all the measures and we're doing it, but do your measures actually make you secure? Are they effective measures?
Yeah. So then again, an exchange with someone who says absolutely it's secure wants you to ask no more questions. So if Dave and I were here right now, I'd say, okay, we don't want ballot harvesters. They go out and they canvass the streets. They take registered voters and collect ones that will vote for Democrats. Anybody who says Republican, they don't turn those ones in, and they're a delivery mechanism. And this is illegal. You can't drop off more than 20 ballots at one shot. Okay. So in your secure board of elections, how do you stop when you have a drop box, someone coming and taking 1,000 ballots and feeding it into the box, and then somebody picks it up the next day, and it's assumed that they came from individual people, but where's your compliancy for making sure that doesn't happen? So now if you're like, well, we have no way to find out if people are mass dropping of boxes. Now I'm like, okay, let's make it so that we have a camera on the box. And then somebody in the morning goes to the boxes and see if any one of the ballots that were put in there from the previous one, and in the ballot box, it's separated. You open the door, it creates a compartment. You put all the ones that you have, you close the door, and then it separates the drop off so you can see if anybody dropped off 20. Now, if you add those to it, now you can do a re-audit and find out if the thing that I said that I don't trust about ballot harvesting, you actually have something in policy to make sure that now I feel good that at least you're trying to make it sure that you don't have these mules dropping off ballots. And the people in the comments are going to say, you don't know that's happening until you can prove that it's happening. It's mathematically probable. And if you aren't doing anything to quell my concern about it, then you are enabling it, and then it's almost certain to happen. That's a lot of, I'm just complaining left and right.
That's okay. Let's see.
The hearings got Kristi Noem fired, so not useless. There is a speck of optimism every once in a while that something comes out of it when we have a personality that's willing to be, take fodder on it.
Carter said, right about that, Julie. They agreed on something.
Yep. No, none of us like Noam or Pan Bondi. There's a couple of these administration that need to go. And I'm so happy when somebody said that she got a position that was a raise but she was in a pivotal role and she needed to go to a place where we didn't even know what she does for a living or what she's working on. And that was the right move. I say fire her completely because I don't trust her as a,
I don't know a whole lot. I don't know. I just didn't pay a lot of attention to her. I guess I've not heard good things, but
she's gone.
Yeah.
Yay. Speaking of election rules, can you run for judge while currently in the middle of being charged with felonious assault? Asking for Devon Stanley. I don't know. That's a good question. I don't know the rules of. I talked to somebody who's running for commissioner while he was mayor, and so there are stipulations that either make it. Honestly, the court system has been used as a strategy and weapon politically, so it doesn't carry a lot of weight when you say someone is charged or alleged or accused of, because as a strategy, it's like, hey, I don't want you to run, so I'm going to get an anonymous source to lodge some kind of complaint against you that don't even really get through. It gets dropped before it gets to court, and you're using the apparatus of the judiciary to hurt somebody politically. I don't put a lot of stock in that.
I would bet there's probably a big difference in, can you run if you're being charged, or can you run if you were found guilty?
Yeah, the felonies for Trump was a great example of how the system was used to tag him with felonies that no one's ever been tagged that way, right? For the crimes that were happening. And it was specifically a strategy so they can say he's a 34-time felon. Yeah. And that's it, right?
Yeah. Yep. Registered people and a pin. Camera spoils the whole box. Prevent it by having a feed system and a pin that can only be used once.
That's exactly right. Those are all great ways of increasing the trust of the people who are suspicious, at the same time quelling the it doesn't happen people, because what will happen if you put those regulations on? The first thing is that it's going to somehow affect a minority group that then makes it harder to do something. That is the
like when we asked to
response.
show an ID.
Show an ID, and all of a sudden that's oppressive and whatever, when it's just a strategy that creates a barrier higher than zero to filter out and make it harder for fraudsters to do it without at least a little pushback. Anyway, Joe, your concerns are not new. The mule idea was debunked. No, I'm not saying from an action, right? I'm saying mathematically there is not something stopping it from happening. And in fact, there's a lubricated path for it happening. I'm not saying I know it is happening, but if it's possible to happen, right? Even without evidence, all you have to do is make it so that the thing I think is happening is impossible, and I'm cool. The further out you push any remedy or any pushback against the thing I'm going to be suspicious that you want that thing to happen, and you don't want me to ask questions in that department. So then you can get me to shut up by just doing the thing has zero cost. Zero cost. All you have to do is care that somebody's not doing it, and then finding out that they're not doing it anymore. Everybody's happy.
Yeah. Yeah. Spoils meaning could allow the box to be spoiled. Prevent it, I mean mechanism to prevent it.
Yeah, that's all you'd have to do. Yeah, disallow it completely. Now, do you think the boxes are too big of an invitation or temptation to cheat?
You're talking about the boxes where you can kind of turn things in other than the day of? I could see it being an invitation to cheat. I could see it being maybe a way to.
What I like about it, though, so I'm a big proponent of digital voting.
Interesting.
Okay.
Okay.
And because it serves three components, actually. Number one, you can tie a person to a token to vote very easily, and you don't have to be a tech person. You can make sure that it is provable that you're the only person that can cast a vote with that token. Nobody can do it on your behalf. People can't leave their house, so they're overseas. It doesn't matter your location or where you're at. You submit your token. That is you. If there are 340 million people, there are 340 tokens. If you're a registered citizen to be here, you get a token, and it's yours for life. You can't lose it. Can't transfer it. It dies with you. Nobody's ever able to use it. We can effectively give one to every legal person that there is, and that becomes your voting token, your proof of identity. It is you through and through. And number three, it will make elections happen almost freaking instantly.
Yeah.
Almost instantly, because the counts will happen real time from wherever you're at. No lines to hit, no paper ballots. Anytime analog things are involved, you could skirt systems.
We don't have to wait days to know for sure who the president is.
Yeah. And then I don't care about, you know why I care about harvesting? Because it's selective harvesting, right? When I'm a Democrat operative and I'm doing canvassing and I'm able to take the harvested ballots that I've created, I don't have to turn in the Republican ones. So I can skew the results by collecting up the 100 that I helped the elderly vote with, right? Put it in their envelope, mark the ones that Republicans, and those find themselves in the trash. There's no defense against that.
Yeah.
So if I harvest it, it means that I'm harvesting so they get out to vote that MTV used to do. Remember, rock the vote or whatever.
Rock the vote, yeah.
That was a mechanism to get liberals to vote in heavier quantities because the demographic for watching MTV was highly Democratic. So they really wanted Democrats to vote. That was early harvesting, where I want to have an all encapsulating every persuasion, every person that can vote gets a nudging. Hey, do your civic duty and vote. What that means is no more Republicans or Democrats. By the way, I think the statistics are if everybody was forced to vote under penalty like jury duty, then Republicans would run away with every freaking election that there ever was.
Yeah.
Okay? And we don't want that. So it's not a method that if we implemented right now that wouldn't have, bigger complications. So the Democrats need to have these sort of schemes to keep that balance of power going at least somewhat in a moderate direction. But so it's not a great solution because I know what would happen after it. Democrats would just be in the dust.
Why is that, do you think? If everybody was required to vote and everybody did, Republicans would win every time. Why do you think that is?
Because population densities in California, the electoral system really works in the advantage of Democrats, and it skews that. It's going to be a component. When I say to do this whole election thing, you can actually do the popular vote then because it's 100% of the voting public. You don't have to do electors. You don't have to do districts because it's just a pure direct democracy because everyone, every single person. But when you have only a portion of it, then you can't let a heavy voter turnout for Republicans skew it so that your electors balance that out. You have more of a mathematical average because you have population densities that represent more of a carrying weight. And so that if you had the whole state of Montana who really likes to vote, that kind of thing.
Okay. Emma Lobro said, just because you're charged. Oh, wait, they said something above that I think we need. Maybe they didn't. Just because you're charged, you can still run. Depending on the position, you can even stay in power with a felony charge.
Yes.
Okay, now we know. It's possible aliens will abduct me tomorrow. Mathematically possible does not equal action. For me, it would be like if you have an asset that you value, then you protect it against high probability things. And if you ask voters, what is your biggest concerns about voting? And if you can get 60, 70% say integrity is high on my list, well, you haven't taken a minimized concern and Bigfoot and alien and made it related or ratioed to what real concerns are for people who are doing the voting. You can't just put it in that minimal, let's not even pay attention to it just because, it's an unknown at that point.
Yeah. Mathematically possible does not equal. I mean, yeah, anything can be possible, but if there is legit concern or evidence of.
Yeah, you like digital voting and want to avoid fraud. Because the either you're using, some kind of blockchain or you're doing something that is managed. I'll give you upside downside on that because there is downside to it for sure.
Yeah, I think anybody would be like, digital? Well, that can be compromised.
Yes. Well, the token system in blockchain, once you own it dies with you. Okay. Mm-hmm. But if you don't know about blockchain, you can very easily let your token be under the control of other people. So the first step would be you have to teach everybody that this is your life. So where do you put your social security card in your house? Don't actually say the thing, but you put it in a place where you can find it, but you don't want to take it out in public because that is your freaking life. You don't want it stolen. You don't want it lost. It's important. So you put it in somewhere where only you can get to it and it's safe and secure.
Mm-hmm.
Well, your tokens should be treated the same way, right? Because if you give it to somebody or they hack it or you had a bad password or you lost your phone, all of that stuff has to be engineered so that it, just like your social security card, you can invalidate it if something should happen. So the mechanisms that keep it as a single issue, never to be replaced, safe and secure, so it moves with you as a person, right?
Mm-hmm.
That it means that it's tagged to you for your entire life. Solve that part of the problem first. So that if I wanted to vote as you, do you think I could vote as your token? I can hack your vote into the system for sure. But the way the blockchain works, that I put my vote, I hack it into the system, and it works on an agreement system. So as all of the other hubs of encryption don't have my hacked vote placed in there. So like I'm a Democrat operative, and I'm going to take a table that had a bunch of encryption tokens, and I'm going to slide it into the blockchain, right? Well, I'm going to convince the local node that I was working with that those are real and it's going to count them. But all of the other nodes are going to be like, those don't have any kind of input outputs on those. Takes those immediately and kicks them out of the system because there was not agreement in the system. So it keeps your token, that is, you push, nobody can pull it from you. You're the only person with that token that can push it into the system.
Did you understand that, Matthew? Does that answer your question? There's a lot of words I don't get, but it sounds secure.
You're conflating mathematically possible for high probability. The mule idea is not highly possible,
but it is still a high, it is in high mind of the country. So if break-ins happen, if nuclear war happens, if voter fraud happens, when the citizens are concerned, it takes a low possibility deal and it makes it so that it's incumbent on the people who are managing it to make sure that it's right. I watch, local governments here that they misoperate, right?
Mm-hmm.
Until it becomes a concern and they get their shit together when people are paying attention to it, even though it's a low possibility with no real evidence or mathematically that it's still a blip on your mathematical scale.
They still know they're being watched.
Exactly. And immediately when you pay attention to a low probability deal that's a high concern for the citizens, you clean it up. Either you get there and say, oh, it wasn't as bad as I thought, but now the concern made it even squeakier than it was before. Or if you get there and it was everything you thought it, then you can clean it up because now you know. That's the ultimate transparency that I can save you guys the whole it's not happening thing. You saying that will never, right, dissuade me from being concerned about a mathematical thing that I think has a higher probability that I have evidence to support.
Yeah.
100% of the time.
Matthew says you should do a show talking to the local election officials. Maybe they'll show you why things are the way they are.
I know why they are. Status quo is politically expedient, and taking all of your messes and crises without things that are possible to fix them. You create a cycle of pushing something out. Social Security is broken, and then watching 20 years go by with nobody that either wants to or can fix Social Security. That's what politicians do. They're not problem solvers, right? They run on crisis and problems, but they don't actually know how to solve problems. So putting these problems in the hands of people who have no advantage on solving something.
We've had local officials on.
Yes, and they're the political narrative is they will never commit to saying, if I don't solve this problem, I will never run for political office. They will never say those words. Now, if you ordered something and didn't send it to you, there's sort of a guarantee that when they say they're going to do something, you hold them accountable. You can have people say, we're not going to start any new wars. And then they're bombing Iran one day. And you're like, oh, you said you weren't going to do that. Right. Mm-hmm. But I'm still on your team, brother, because I'm going to justify it and make this not a war.
Sure, you had a good reason.
Not a war. Yeah, exactly.
Sure, you had a good
But
reason.
it's up to the voters to get really strict about how their accountability is. I don't expect the scammers to hold themselves accountable. I expect the voters to not be brain dead and keep voting into people who lie to you, break their promises, say they're going to do something, and then have a bevy of excuses. Well, that just couldn't have been done. They're good at bringing out problems, not good at actually solving them or even having a reason to. My blood pressure is at like 197 right now. It's awful.
You're going to stroke out. Let's see. Social Security is broken because we lowered taxes for the top 1%.
A mathematically broken system that has one endpoint failure. Come on, Matthew. You're smarter than that. You know in your brain the one thing you want to happen, and now you've made it either what's the opposite of kryptonite? Kryptonite makes something not happen. This would be the holy grail. Well, also use
not having kryptonite.
Oh, okay. the one thing, raise taxes on those evil billionaires, is going to fix a mathematically flawed system. Sure. Okay. Come on, Matt.
He says, look at the history of taxes and how the country has done.
Oh yeah, go look back before we had income taxes and corporate taxes and how we got things paid for. Go look at that effing history. But here's where Matt is going to slide back his graph to when those things were already included, right? And show how they've gone up and down. Like they're going to see the 80s where you had this really high rates, and they're not going to show the 20s and the 10s and the 1900s when we went from 1776 to 18 whatever without income taxes. We weren't going after those evil billionaires. How did shit get built, dudes? How did we go to wars, dudes? Slide your timeline way back and then come at me with taxes are what broke Social Security.
So is that your example earlier of like, instead of this much evidence, we're going to look at this timeline?
Yes, it's a favorite. He's going to say the one thing he wants to happen is tax people more and make that your anti-kryptonite. For if we would have done that, Social Security would be the mathematically system that is terrible output and gives people a net loss on their investment. That one we need to preserve and protect by just going after big caches of money that aren't ours. Theft. Jesus Christ, look, what did I drink today?
I know Matthew's he's typing right now. I know it's coming.
I'm too good at this, Matthew. You got to come at me harder. And I didn't turn the phones on because I'm afraid of what Matthew would say in person.
Well, hey, Matthew has an open invitation to come and sit right here.
Yeah.
Anytime you want, Matthew.
All right. Since I completely held hostage this show on my rants, is there anything you wanted to talk about?
This is not probably a long topic. It's just something that grinds my gears.
Okay. This is the day. Get it all off of your chest.
This grinds my gears because it's sort of on the subject of like media headlines. I know you're not into the Nancy Guthrie stuff, but you, I'm sure, know, as most people probably have at least heard by now, the whole disappearance of Nancy Guthrie was taken. They've been looking for her for quite a while now. Everybody is wondering where this woman is, I think, and if she is still alive or not. There was a news headline that broke several days ago, and it said, "Woman's body found amidst the search for Nancy Guthrie." And my brain went, well, I know it's not Nancy Guthrie. That headline would have read totally different. Every news organization is chomping at the bit, I am sure, to be the first to break anything substantial on this story. So that tells me I already know without reading this article, it wasn't her. You would have come out and said that. So I click on it to be like, all right, what are they doing? And true to form, it wasn't her. It was a different person, totally unrelated. And I went, how scuzzy. Like that just irked me to the point of like, this is so much about you getting clicks and attention and gaining that you took a completely unrelated topic and somehow put Nancy Guthrie's name in the headline when it was not her. And you knew that was not her.
I'm going to blame you. I'm going to blame you.
You're probably not wrong.
Do you know why I'm blaming you?
Because I'm looking at it.
Did you click?
I clicked because I wanted to see what the heck they were doing, knowing it wasn't her. I wanted to make my point.
But did you click?
Yep.
So the people who are writing the scuzzy headlines that you knew was probably just a scuzzy headline to get a click, you did what?
I clicked on it.
The real thing to do is not click and make them be a little bit more honest about their headlines. And maybe when they're more honest, you'll get their attention.
Maybe I thought there was some shred of like, is this?
Well, you rewarded the villains for the sake of giving them something they didn't deserve, like benefit of doubt.
I did.
Thank you for being a participant in the fall of Western society. Thank you. But anyway, but I could ask you before you clicked on it, if you came to me and say, Joe, there's this headline. I think it's pretty scuzzy. And I want to give them benefit of the doubt that they gave me an honest headline. And I said, okay, well, what company was it? Okay, it's XYZ company. And what's their business model? How do they make money? And you're like, if I click on things, they make money. And I'm like, okay, so they have an incentive to get you to click on something. So if you're like, if they wrote the headline, body who was not Nancy Guthrie's found in the search for Nancy Guthrie. You'd be like, I'm not clicking on that because, I'm really interested in, did they find Nancy Guthrie? And that tells me in the headline, I'm not going to get anything I want out of this. And they're like, we can't have that. We got to at least make a little implication, a little implied meaning that this might be Nancy
this new
Guthrie.
evidence.
And then people like Kelin will click and they'll be all mad when they don't get it, but they'll still click the next one because they are addicted. They give benefit of the doubt. We don't deserve it, but I'm so glad that she gives it.
I clicked to prove my point and they don't care.
They don't.
They're like, oh, I'm glad you proved your point. You still clicked.
Yeah.
You still gave us what we wanted.
That. They're depending that gets the better of you and you do the thing anyway. And even if you feel ill about it, you'll still do it the next time.
Yeah. And now with just the enormous amount of fake, what do you call them? Sources, I guess. Fake news sources talking about all kinds of stuff. Like I saw one, it was a post and it was like, oh, Jim Carrey admits he was trying to fake people out at this award show. The one that everybody's saying, what happened to Jim Carrey? That's not his face, blah, blah, blah. They show these pictures of him like going like this and ripping off a mask. And it was Jim Carrey went disguised as himself just to fake people out. And it's so obviously AI. Like going to rip off a mask, but like everything is all blurry and it's not like a real looking mask. It's like so fake. It's so obviously fake. But it's like, but that's everywhere now. I mean, I was looking on my Facebook wall the other day and it was just fake after fake after fake after fake. And what's interesting now is I always say it's getting harder and harder to know what's real and what you can trust and what's a solid source and what isn't. We've even talked about before this idea of, is it Netanyahu who met with social media influencers very much trying to get certain narratives pushed out onto social media and onto the internet, whatever he wants people to believe. Well, have you heard of the whole conspiracy theory that it was actually Israel behind the assassination of Charlie Kirk and not this crazy kid? Have you heard any of that?
I saw it, but I don't.
So I've not been following it much because I was like, well, I don't know. To me, what makes more sense? This highly political, divisive climate we're in, where a crazy person would attempt to kill someone because they don't like what they said, highly probable. Mm-hmm. Or a very in-depth, sophisticated scheme by another country who didn't like a podcaster. But now I am not so sure because I have seen he would actually care about somebody that is influencing a narrative or talking to people in mass quantities or making them wonder. So now I'm like, oh my God, is it possible that this crazy
this
dude
is where my engineer brain kicks out. Right?
Okay.
Because this is another one of those unsolvable problems, right? Where mathematically, okay. So if you roll it out and say, do governments kill people? Do they do assassinations?
I think so.
Okay. So that's answer is yes. So do all governments or some governments, do they use covert operations to take out just enemies, or can they take out people who were not enemies?
I mean, I guess they could.
Okay. Is there a way to know if they did or they did not?
For the average citizen to know? Probably not.
Okay. So really, any government can do anything they want and you'll never know about it, right?
Yeah.
So if you were interested in solving the problem, you would make it so that governments couldn't do that. And there is no interest in any government to use that ability for good reasons.
Or what would you even do about it?
You can't do anything about
it.
Because it's going to be under layers of secrecy forever. You'll never know that it happened. So they can take a pot shot at somebody and blame somebody else, and they can do that all day long.
And now with all the fake information we're served every day, all they would have to say is, that's fake information.
That's exactly right. So that's why my engineering brain kicks out, because there's nothing to do with it. Yes, your government kills people. Yes, they do it in secrecy, and you'll never know about it. So whether or not you think they did or didn't, like, you'll never know, right? And you're not looking to clean it up so it can't happen. So there's nothing to do with that information. There's no utility in it.
Matthew says Kirk has close ties to the president and was instrumental in his election success. Israel would have reasons to kill him. I don't think it's likely, though. Right. Like, that's what I was thinking is Charlie Kirk, it wasn't a secret. He outright said he is trying to get President Trump elected. He was influencing people. He was a very prominent figure in this election. So
yeah, and
the biggest stretch.
The second part of your deal is that Americans are highly manipulated by news, reels, AI, and whatever.
I think not even Americans, everybody.
If a government can solve their problem with taking you out, which is messy and it risks exposure, but instead they can cultivate the same output just basing bots and AI and things that aren't true. I bet you they use that one more heavily than the assassination one, who has some open risks to it.
True. Matthew says, now Kirk's wife, on the other hand, she seems so sketchy.
That's right. I'm not dabbling in this one because I'll never know and I can't do anything with it. So have fun with it.
Wait a minute. We dabble in things every day that we can't do anything about.
End where I can engineer it. This has no exercise to it. How I feel about it, it's going to be the same after the discussion. It could or it might not.
That's what I say about politicians in general, is we can say, oh, it isn't fair that it's a two-party system and they're both corrupt, and it isn't fair that they can manipulate each other, manipulate us.
We can vote. We can tell people to be more mindful when they pull that vote. There's an exercise.
But then that could be corrupted and there could be fraud.
It doesn't matter. There's still something you could do about it. Okay, I want you right now to decide that there was an assassination on Charlie Kirk by Israel. Go do something about it.
Oh, yeah.
Is any vote, any money spend, any criticism?
That's like, the Epstein files. I think these people are in the Epstein files and they did illegal things. Go do something about
exactly
it.
Right.
Or you're screwed.
Yeah. So that's why I check out on most of these things, because I can't play a hand in it. And I know that there's a strata above regular people where they can do things that we can't, and we'll never know about it. And they're in control.
Yeah. And again, it's all an emotional thing. Like, I have heard this. She was ecstatic on a phone call after his funeral talking about t-shirt sales. She's in it for the money. I've heard that. I've also heard the other side, why she sounded ecstatic, what was happening other than those t-shirt sales, how it could very easily be made to look as though that's what she was ecstatic about. It's all manipulation.
Matthew, do you notice this? And I like you a lot, and I think you add a good contribution. I want to maybe plant a seed that, do you notice all of your conspiracies or your criticisms, they always cut in one direction that always aligns with people that you don't like. And in the other direction, it's always benefit of doubt. So it's not an objective mind that's being put through the filter. It is a really hostage scenario where no matter what, you're just like every other Democrat and every Republican for that matter, who will always by default set up defenses against their side and be, impervious to the criticisms without justifying in her defense, and always with a straight arrow believe the first thing and instead of just being curious about it. I want to put that in your mind because it comes through in every question. But if just one time, I just talk shit about freaking Trump, right?
Same thing, Joe.
I am willing to, no matter the noun in front of me, be equal in how my criticisms cut. Because it's objective and I don't care who is a beneficiary or who's in the target with it. You, on the other hand, get you to say something highly critical or believes very easily about something is true about Erica Kirk, and you're on board because you don't like that one in the first place. Right.
Yeah.
But otherwise you'll basically question the one and make sure that it has some traction before you're willing to believe it.
And again, didn't pause for a second to consider that Joe is right or how or why. I mean, I have felt knee-jerk reactions to defend something or someone because of how I feel about them. And then ultimately went, but I mean, is there when everybody was saying RFK Jr. was a crazy person who was doing all these weird things, I was like, is he?
Exactly.
Let me go read about the crazy things he did.
Freaking healthy.
Hoping it wasn't true, but I want to know. And so you could say, yes, I tend to feel for the one side more based off of my own experiences. I hope that they're the right ones. But I'll give it to you when you have a good point, or I'll give it to you. Like, again, I've said, I totally get the narrative against Erica Kirk looking sketchy. I can't blame you from what I've seen. but it also falls very short and very flat when I see these other things. So I don't know. I don't know her personally.
Well, here's the difference between literal dogma and sort of like this pseudo dogma. And that's what he's captured in political dogma. I see you said something. I do not do it. You criticize Dems all day. They're do nothing and posture all day.
No, he says, I will criticize Dems all day long. They are do nothing and posture all day to get elected.
But what you are willing to believe and what you're willing to defend, take those cuts. That's all I'm pointing out to you. So here's the deal. Like pastors and religious people do not like me. Do you know why? They do not. Because dogma doesn't really like to talk questions about challenging belief. Right? If I said something that I believe that Jesus Christ was named in the Bible, he's probably a real person. Half the stuff that was told about him was probably the supernatural and maybe made up in men's brains, because when in early literature, the scribes were in control of the accounting for what happened. So there's probably imaginative things and there was probably some real things. Well, pastor's not going to like that, because they would say Jesus is all knowing and Jesus was perfect and everything you read in the Bible is absolutely truthful. It's really hard to not then defend against something you truly believe Jesus was the perfect person when somebody comes along and says, well, he's probably just a guy. He's probably a special guy. He probably wasn't responsible for everything that we think he was. And I'm willing to hear how the ways he wasn't special. And that hurts when you're in the dogma, because it hurts your argument for your followers. Think about what that unwinds with the people who joined you in your belief. If you got this guy talking about things that may or may not be true, I don't know one way or the other. Maybe you're absolutely right, and Jesus was everything you say he is. And I say, I know what I know and what I don't know, and I'm willing to hear things that I'm not 100% certain. Democrats, they believe in things that are things that cannot be believed in with absolute nature. So, but they have this protective layer that says, I'm not even going to listen to something that pierces my belief structure in something. So if I say, we might be completely wrong about global warming, might be completely wrong, they're going to say something like, look at all these experts. Okay. Well, then how many religious experts believe that Jesus was a perfect person and did all the things that say? Does this count too? All these experts say that it absolutely happened. And I'm unwilling, just because experts said it, that I'm willing to go into that dogma and say, just based on what I know about the real world, it could be part my lack of understanding or part that human beings embellish some details and they believe it and there's no harm in them believing it. But I'm not there because I am managed by what I know and what I don't know. And so election fraud, I don't know that it's happening, but I also know that I don't know that it's not happening. And if there's a thing that I want to get curious about and say, oh, mathematically, this is vulnerable to something that I don't know is happening, but mathematically it's possible that that's happening, then that becomes something I need to address before I hang my hat on it and are willing to say elections are completely safe. I'll never say that because I'm trusting people that are untrustworthy. I don't know, and I'm not going to put my credibility on the line vouching for somebody who I don't have a way of knowing if they're telling me the truth. That's in principle.
Yeah.
I spoke louder today than I normally do, don't I?
Does it feel good?
It does.
Get it out. Matthew says, Joe, you and I would get along talking about religion. I'm a believer, but the church and I butt heads. Many religious people would deport Jesus. Any religious people
and Matthew, I like you so much in your way. I wish you would just get critical of your own tribe in the way that I'm suggesting. I don't necessarily want you changing your beliefs and being delusional and believing stuff you don't really believe in. I just want you to not be as convinced that you know more than you really do, and that's not in a dishonest way or a lack of intelligence way. You're preserving ideas that you yourself need to dig into and question, even if it's not outwardly with me. I can tell when you are the product of a dogma. You always can when you're talking to someone. A guy who sells life insurance thinks it's the freaking best, right? You start saying something to an insurance salesman about how it may not all be all that great in some ways. They will get uber defensive. And when they're talking about it, you're like, do you sell insurance or something? And you're like, oh yeah, I do. That's the dogma that I'm talking about. You're overly bought into something and it hurts you
from a professional or an intellectual standpoint if someone questions what you believe in with so much of your might.
Yeah, I was just having a conversation the other day with my husband, and we were talking to someone else too about this idea of the middle and being in the middle. A lot of people will say, and somebody told me this one time, being in the middle is a cop-out. You're just playing it safe. Yeah. And we realize it's actually the hardest place to be. Because if you pick a side, at least you've got a whole group of people supporting you. You've got a whole group of people surrounding you, telling you what you want to hear. You're the right one. They're the enemy. We'll back you up. You have a home to either side. When you're in the middle and you're calling out bullcrap on both sides or something you support about both sides, now you get flack from both sides.
Right.
It's the hardest place to be because when we are so divided, now you have this extreme push-pull to join a side, and it's very difficult not to. And I've seen it before. I've had times when, and a lot of times I think it's human nature, depending on who you are around most often, you might start to lean one way or the other because you're getting more information about the one side. But you can always still question. You can always still ask, like your example with Jesus and the Bible. There could be things, if you say, oh, well, this time, historically speaking, men would have written this, so that's why we believe it. Well, historically speaking, men would not have written in that a woman was the first person to see Jesus resurrected and go tell everyone. That's not what men would have done historically. So I could see where, okay, well, I might push back, but I'll give you that. I can't believe Adam and Eve really existed. I want to, but I can't because I don't have information.
It's a healthy state. So let's do a thought experiment with that, Matthew. And you phrased it in a way, and let me kind of like give you my opinion on this. He said that many religious people would deport Jesus. And that is something that has been parroted by leftists as a middle finger to religious people. Like, hey, see, you're so tolerant. You would have probably, and that's, I'm going to change its phrasing so that it's actually something that you can discuss. Because I wouldn't have this discussion unless I didn't know Matthew and I know that he was coming from that place anyway. Yeah. So do you think that Jesus would be deported?
In this culture, in this day and age? Is that what we're asking?
That's the phrasing where today, because the Democrat or the left's position is that people get deported because they are of a certain descent. Right? Yeah. And so if we were living in the day and time and area of Jesus, no, he's there. If it were the day and time of us now and Jesus came from another country, but he came here legally, then again, so do you think Jesus would have followed the rules and he would have immigrated the legal way?
Yes.
Okay. And now what? Now
and Jesus, I can back that up why I say yes. But
go ahead real quick because I want to.
Because scripturally speaking, you hear things about him like supporting. Oh, should we pay taxes? Well, whose money is it? If it's Caesar's money, give it to him. You should be doing this. You should respect your parents, even if you disagree. You should blah blah blah. So I could see Jesus saying, "Yes, if this is the rule, I'm going to follow it."
But he was willing. But he was willing, for the allegory's sake, to martyr himself and put himself in peril. So could you see Jesus coming here and saying, they're doing a wrong by deporting people. I'm going to be deported to save all the other deported. The Life of David Gale thing. Like, I'm going to show that this deportation, so I'm willing to martyr myself for a system to just show how outraged you should be and how much of a sin this actually is. So there's two parts of it. The assumption that people of different persuasions get deported, which I don't believe that. The willingness to break a rule to prove a point for the allegory, which I do believe that might be a possibility. Or if on the other side, you're like, if we take historical figures. So if we took Albert Einstein, right, and take everything you know about Albert Einstein, you move him up today, and would he be effective in today's climate, or would he be laughed out of all of the modern sciences? Nikola Tesla, would he be adopted into modern sciences, or would he be cast out? Would they be effective? You could do that with everybody who was successful on their own time for their reasons. And you would get arguments about how Albert Einstein would never be hanging on my wall had he lived today because of what science would do to the status quo pushers that weren't in it for this. Was this kind of ethnic background? Was this kind of connection? Albert Einstein had hated academia. He taught in academia, freaking hated it. So if I'm a guy that's really intelligent, I push on academia. You think academia is going to let me participate if I have a hater that pushes on the dogma of academia? No, he'd never even he'd be a professor. He would have died an old man telling important things, intelligent things on his front porch. So you can make that argument all day to prove that point and make the accusation against and middle finger the church. And that's all you're doing. You're not actually proving a relevant point.
Yeah.
I'm so damn good at this.
Matthew might have said something a little higher, maybe. The middle is a cop out. The reality is there are not two sides.
Get him, Kelin.
There's infinite. Okay, so Matt, okay. The middle is a cop out. There's infinite. So basically,
that's not wrong. That's
yeah.
true.
So are we kind of just on the same
You're
page?
on the spectrum, right? You're on the spectrum.
I feel like we're on the same page, just calling it something different.
Yes, that is actually
like there's that argue just to argue. I'm saying we're not to one side or another.
But here's the deal. The left and the right proper are in a tribe. Everybody who does not fit in the container of being in the tribe is everything else for whatever reason. So if you're outside of the tribe and unjoinable to a group and don't, track down to be able to join a group, you're what Kelin is talking about is you don't want to be placed in any kind of group that's limiting on what you could think, feel, question, and so on.
Yeah.
That's the third
Like
option.
I hate that because I will say that I agree with something RFK Jr. did. I'm automatically right. I'm automatically MAGA, Trumper, blah, 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 because he is now associated with them. And I'm like, hello, I was on board with him before he ever picked a side, when he was trying not to pick a side, and it's like, yeah, like everything is like, oh, you're one or the other.
Yep.
And I can tell by what you say or what you like, you're one or the other. And I'm like, well, how about I say I like this and I also say I like this?
That's exactly right. All right. At the time of the Bible, Jesus was an immigrant and spoke to protect your neighbors. The idea behind the statement comes from my critique of you told Jesus to be in extremely high regard. Would you enforce immigration laws on him, or would you get past that since it's the second coming of Christ?
Listen, can we all agree there is a difference between immigrants and illegal
Listen, they
people
know
that are here?
They are not hearing that second part. They're not
that
hearing
is
it.
the argument.
There's no distinction.
Yes.
Get off of it. It is all the same to them.
Jesus would be an immigrant. Correct. So there would be no problem. Nobody has ever said we hate and deport immigrants.
No, it's all the same.
Yes. Now, if Jesus was
An
criminal,
illegal immigrant,
and he came here illegally, and maybe he came here illegally and started.
well, the
I don't
point
know.
is, if he immaculately just returned in the middle of Utah, didn't come immigration, didn't get checks, and now he's got no identity whatsoever.
It is so hot in here, by the way.
Would you then say, oh, it's the second coming of Christ? And there are some people who be like, no, look, he has no documentation. He's no better than the illegal immigrant that you're charging
if he started
with.
performing signs and wonders, then we'll talk. We'll talk if
You'd
you
give him
need.
a pass.
If
Jesus would get a
you
pass.
don't have papers to be here, but you did all these other things, I will listen to you. And
I want to see
consider.
the SNL skit of them trying to arrest Jesus and putting the cuffs off, and then they get cuffed or something like that. That would be funny.
Yeah.
But I
Signs
know,
and wonders, or just here
I
with
know
no
what you're getting at,
documentation.
and it's meant to be like you can't be hardcore on illegal people because you wouldn't deport Jesus. Get it? Okay, get it.
Got it.
Kelin, you know the answer. Jesus said to support the immigrants. He had the hyphen is not there. You notice that? You notice that?
Yep. He had principles
that would absolutely get deported today. Leviticus.
Would Jesus get rid of a criminal or somebody that
he
was hurting
released criminals.
somebody?
He released criminals from jail.
If they were hurting somebody?
Freed them. Terrible, terrible, terrible people. Terrible people. But here's the thing. Why are we talking about Jesus?
Yeah.
These freaking secularists, they don't care anything to give them
Again, in
like,
this day and age, if I didn't know Jesus was a Messiah, I would have some questions and some beef. You prove to me you're the Son of God, I might give you a pass.
So just answer these secularists with, hey, do you even believe in Jesus whatsoever? Oh, no, you don't? Okay,
is
let's
this
not have
just
this
a
conversation.
gotcha moment,
It is.
or does
This
it
is
have
not
any
an
weight?
intellectual digging.
We've got to turn that fan on behind you. It got so hot in this room. Like, not got, but it has been for the last 2 hours, and now it's Now we're getting fired up, baby. Okay.
Yeah, it's a gotcha. I'm gonna let that pass. You got it out of your system, and
And again, we're arguing semantics over what's an immigrant and what people are actually trying to deport.
The argument is it that we want to apply biblical principles with lethality and heavy-handedness to all people? Is that what you're really saying? Because there's some stuff in the Bible that you might get illegal immigrants to stay, but there are a whole lot of other tropes in the Bible that you are not going to like. So if you're inviting that part
listen,
there's my gotcha back.
If you want Jesus to be welcomed in with no questions asked, whether he's coming in legally or not, because we are to love our neighbor, then I want you all to start loving Trump. Why not?
Love your neighbor.
We're living like Jesus. Y'all better start showing Trump some grace.
This is a putrid argument because nobody believes what they're waging. You're just trying to hurt someone. I will tell you this, when you have a faith is super important, right? And we have like a different version of it where we put dogma and faith in things that do not deserve that kind of faith. And the one sin that you can do against another person is to undermine their faith. So if I'm believing that I can get healthier in a department and I'm already vulnerable because I'm not real good at it and I'm already questioning myself and I have doubt, and you come along and undermine my faith and ruin what I was working on to better myself, then that is one of the gravest sins that you can do. And so if you believe in Jesus and you're keeping us straight as an arrow and you're following the teachings and you're garnering wisdom, the sinner is the person that comes in there, tries to take that away from you to hurt you, right? And so that little gotcha, it insults me on a level of faith.
Yeah. I mean, if I'm like, well, I'm following Jesus, so I'm trying to be a good person and I'm helping people when I can and I'm serving my community and I'm living a life that shows the goodness of following Jesus. And you come in and be like, well, you know, this God that you think is so great and he's helping you live a better life. And this day and age would be looked at differently.
Or he's just a spaghetti monster. So don't you believe in him and have a good life and be a good person and not tell lies and not steal and kill?
I'll go and be terrible then. Yeah, I'll go and not have a good life.
That's the real... Those real arguments.
If there's a real enemy, that's what the enemy would do.
Yes. Yeah.
Congratulations, you all are the devil. Just kidding, by the way.
You threw me off on that one.
I called everybody the devil. You're the devil.
That was right from what was it? Adam Sandler movie.
Waterboy.
The Waterboy.
The devil.
The devil.
The devil. BJ's like, you nutcases have 3 minutes. Criminals should be deported. The problem is where people all call undocumented immigrants criminals when being undocumented is not a crime. It is a civil violation.
Here we go. That's the second part of the justification to protect the dogma.
Real criminals deserve deportation.
Checking all the box.
Immigrants who are trying through our horrible immigration process should be given grace. Carter says, good one, Kelin. I don't know what that was about, but thank you, Carter.
She'll take it. But anyway, this was fun. We are going to get out of here. This was a real good conversation. As I argued earlier, one of the best purchases of our lifetime, Elon Musk buying X, to allow these little squabbles, little back and forth to happen. So important to the discourse to have opposing views.
Yeah.
All the social media companies were compromised by influence from activists. And so they took certain things that we couldn't talk about and would get banned and get no traction under the guise of misinformation. And so it limited what we could say. Our little turnabouts with these people are super important to be able to push on each other and create these little conflicts.
The fact that people like Julie and Matthew and Penny Lane and all these other people still show up every day and will listen and consider, and we listen and consider them, and we don't just take our ball and go home is so hugely important.
Yeah, and we live in a sophisticated society, so there is not going to be an easy win where somebody's going to walk away and be convinced of something. But if these sparring sessions happen and you pick up like 1% perspective or 1% new information over the aggregate, you listen to the show long enough and you will be more open and have your perceptions at truth and honesty rather than capture dogma. So that's the whole moral of the story.
We can all still shake hands.
That's right. I'd hug both Matthew and Julie right now. All right. Thanks for listening, everybody. We'll catch you next time.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to this show on Youngstown Studio. This is original Youngstown content. Feel free to share our videos and tell your friends about us. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel